1997, Mortal Kombat 4 was released to the world to a somewhat positive reception, as the game is usually considered as one of the more forgettable entries into the series. But did you know that there is a Brazilian exclusive comic book series tie-in based around this game? Now, if you've been following this channel for a while, you might be familiar with a video I've done before in which I take a look at the Brazilian Mega Man, an official Brazilian exclusive comic book series that was extremely violent, filled with nudity, whose editor's columns were filled with xenophobia against other South American nations, Americans, and Asians, especially the Japanese. Or you might remember my recent Brazilian Street Fighter video, which was also incredibly violent, took any opportunity it could to get Cammy, Chun-Li, and Sakura naked, and in some cases it even had this weird focus on their feet of all things. Well, now we're gonna complete this trifecta, because in 1998, Brazil got another exclusive and official comic book series, this time themed around Mortal Kombat, which, surprise surprise, was also extremely violent and sexy. I think I'm beginning to notice a pattern here. This comic book series was helmed under a different publisher than either the Street Fighter or Mega Man releases, but a few of the names here might be familiar to you, namely the editor, Marcel Cassaro, who was also the head writer for the initial run of the Brazilian Street Fighter comic book series I took a look at a few weeks ago, though the writers would change hands eventually, which would result in the comics' second reboot. Interestingly enough, he would also be a writer for yet another Brazilian Street Fighter comic book series called Street Fighter 03, a comic book series which focused on Street Fighter Alpha 3's plot, with the art being done by Erika Awano. And if that name sounds familiar, it's because she was one of the artists for the Brazilian Mega Man comic book series. And in fact, the artist behind this Mortal Kombat series is Eduardo Francisco, who was also one of the artists behind the Brazilian Mega Man comic book series. Man, at this point, it feels like I'm just running around in one big circle that is the Brazilian video game to comic book adaptation industry. Oh man, my head hurts. But yeah, this Mortal Kombat comic book series actually launched after the Brazilian Mega Man and Brazilian Super Street Fighter 2 comic book series, though it did launch at roughly the same time as the Street Fighter Alpha 3 comic book series. So it's kind of interesting to see how the careers of some of these artists and writers progressed over the years.
But wait! There's more!
Oh, but wait! We're not done yet! Because, as it turns out, Marcel Cassaro was also an avid tabletop RPG player and would end up working as the editor to the Brazilian version of Dragon Magazine, where he would create several tabletop RPG games based around popular video games. These would include RPGs based around Mega Man, Darkstalkers, Mortal Kombat 4, and even Street Fighter Alpha 3. It's funny too, because the Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter ones seem like they were tailor-made as a cross-promotion tool for their respective comics. I did check out the Mortal Kombat 4 RPG rulebook and, well, I mean, it's a little on the basic side, featuring simplified stats and short maps. But then again, I mean, this is based around Mortal Kombat 4, so let's be honest here. Just how much of that game could you actually stretch out into an RPG in the first place, especially one that came free with a magazine? At least the Street Fighter RPG one does seem a bit more complete, as it even received an additional supplement with a new campaign and more characters. But that's not what we're here for today. We're here for the Brazilian Mortal Kombat 4 comic book series. It's just that if I didn't talk about these RPGs now, I don't think I would ever get around to covering them. Now, I actually got a chance to speak with Marcel Cassaro, the editor behind this series, who told me that despite this comic book series being official, there was no input from Midway, Acclaim, or Ed Boon. Basically, both Capcom and Mortal Kombat were sub-licensed to the same Brazilian distribution company. And according to Marcelo, they built a pretty informal relationship with the Brazilian rights holder during the Street Fighter 2 comic book run. So acquiring the rights to publish a Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter Alpha 3 comic book series was relatively easy. But getting back on topic, Mortal Kombat 4 was a 4-issue miniseries launched exclusively in Brazil. Their launch seems to more or less coincide with the home ports of the game, namely the N64 and PlayStation versions, which also launched the same year. I was expecting this whole series to be a prequel to the game, but I was surprised to learn that it's actually a retelling of the events of Mortal Kombat 4. It's also pretty interesting to see that Marcelo chose a 4-issue miniseries because it was standard for the US comic book industry at the time, citing how Image Comics would often do the same with their own lineup of superheroes, and if one of these runs performed well, it would then be turned into an ongoing series. Anyway, the first thing I noticed was the art, namely how weird it was. The characters' proportions and their movements feel weird and elastic. Sometimes it works for the best and helps create some dynamic fighting poses, but other times it just looks weird, especially when the characters are just standing still, as they look like they're made out of silly putty. Ironically, the only thing that looks rock hard in this entire run are Sonya's boobs, but we'll get to that.
Hey, are you coming?
Yeah.
I should point out though that there was also a second artist who seems to have only worked on a 4-page side story, providing background information on Tanya, though she's pretty much naked or semi-naked throughout the entire story.
Hey, are you coming?
Yeah.
Anyway, the comic begins with Sonya and Jax in pursuit of Jarek, a character introduced in Mortal Kombat 4 who, like Kano, is also part of the Black Dragon clan. The two ambush Jarek and start beating him up, and Jarek responds by throwing slurs at Jax. Yeah, so I actually could not find the original Brazilian version of this comic, so I only have this translated version to go by. So I don't know if this was in the original version or if it's an embellishment by the translator. Although I will say that this is the only time that these are used throughout the series run, so it's very possible that this was just the translator being edgy. Anyway, Sonya defeats Jarek and the two capture him with the purpose of bringing him back to Raiden. We then jump to Liu Kang, who is fighting alone against the hordes of Netherrealm. At least I think that's Netherrealm, the comic isn't really clear on that. Who are being led by Scorpion. Just as Scorpion is getting the upper hand, he's then frozen solid out of nowhere as Sub-Zero and Kai appear out of nowhere to back up Liu Kang. The three drive off Netherrealm's hordes, and Scorpion is just not mentioned anymore. Yeah, we don't know if he ran, got defeated. Sub-Zero says he's defeated, but all he did was freeze him, and that's a pretty standard move in the games. Are they just gonna leave him there? I don't know. We now skip to Raiden, who is in the Temple of Four Elements. The comic says that its inhabitants have been assassinated, which I think is a reference to Mortal Kombat mythology Sub-Zero. Raiden uses his power to bring back Johnny Cage from the dead, who apparently died at the hands of Shao Kahn during the events of Mortal Kombat 3. Raiden then brings a confused Cage up to speed, telling him that Shao Kahn was defeated, but now a new, even bigger threat looms on the horizon. Raiden is then interrupted by an army who starts attacking the temple. They appear to be staving off the enemy forces with relative ease, though Fusion, the god of wind, also appears and joins them. The first issue then ends with a backup story penned by a different artist, focusing on Tanya.
Hey, are you coming?
Yeah.
Another character introduced in Mortal Kombat 4. In it, she's writing a letter to her father stating how she's abandoning her home. She was providing aid to refugees when she was ambushed by Shinnok and his generals, who invaded and took over the world of Edenia. And the fact that neither Kitana nor Liu Kang did anything to stop this sparked a blind rage on Tanya. So she took up arms and made a deal with Shinnok, vowing she would end Liu Kang's life in exchange for Edenia's safety. We now move on to issue 2, which has Tanya prominently featured on the cover for obvious reasons. Anyway, the comic opens up describing Netherrealm's hordes in that despite looking human, they are actually demons. We then see Fusion fight through these hordes, stating how his brethren were killed by Shinnok, and while that is technically true. If I remember correctly, it was actually the original Sub-Zero, the current Sub-Zero's brother, who did the deed. Regardless, Fusion is hoping to enact revenge on Shinnok during this ordeal. Johnny Cage acts like comic relief and then asks Raiden if the Thunder God can do anything about this horde, and Raiden responds by one-shotting the entire army. Johnny asks Fusion if Raiden could have done this all along, and Fusion pretty much responds yes. But Raiden wanted to give them some satisfying moments in battle. So Raiden wanted his party to grind for some XP, I guess? Okay. We now jump to Quan-Chi and Draco, who are punishing the survivors who fled the battle, where Liu Kang and Sub-Zero defeated Scorpion. The narration also states that Draco was previously thought to be dead, but has come back to life and has instead chosen to become a general in Shinnok's armies. A pretty weak backstory considering that this is a new character introduced in Mortal Kombat 4 if you ask me. Quan-Chi kills the soldiers with his trademark skull attack, resulting in a pretty metal panel, stating that this is the fate of anyone who runs away. Quan-Chi then goes to his sanctum to converse with Shinnok, and I gotta say, the art is at its best when it's trying to be gothic, broody, gory, and metal. These are some genuinely great backgrounds with lots of detail and interesting imagery, and I also like how sometimes the panels can be bloodied. I'll admit I'm not a comic book expert here, but I think I'm sensing some Todd McFarlane and Image Comics vibes here. Like, yeah, I'll admit the character proportions can look pretty weird at times, but the backgrounds and dynamic panel designs are really where the artist shines here. Which makes sense considering the artist, Eduardo Francisco, would later go on to work for Marvel and DC, including the popular Flashpoint series. You know, the one where it takes place in an alternate timeline where Bruce Wayne's dad is Batman and his mom is the Joker. In fact, according to Marcel Cassaro, once the Mortal Kombat 4 run was over, they hired Eduardo as an artist yet again for a new series, Victory, which would end up being published by Image Comics. And looking at some of his Mortal Kombat art here, yeah, it's pretty rough in some places, but you can definitely see that when he's at his element, he could create some really impressive panels even as far back as 1998. Anyway, Quan-Chi converses with Shinnok, calling his demonic hordes worthless and accusing the Mad God of standing idly and doing nothing while he does all the work. This behavior seems pretty unlike Quan-Chi though. Yes, he's a scheming snake, but he was also a firm believer of Shinnok during this time.
I thought Shao Kahn was the...
Shao Kahn is nothing but a peasant ruler of a long-dead realm. Shinnok is the destroyer of all realms.
And even if he only wanted to use the Mad God for his personal gains, which, to be fair, is pretty on point for him, he would not just outright make frontal accusations like this. He's always been more the type to compliment others in front of them and then stab them behind their back.
And I've personally made certain that every last remnant of their clan has been eliminated forever.
You see, Sub-Zero, you can trust a sorcerer sometimes.
Anyway, Shinnok reveals that he cannot enter Earthrealm while Raiden is alive, so he tells Quan-Chi to recruit the best fighters he can use and to use his own resources to create another army. Back at the Temple of Light, everyone is rejoiced to have Johnny Cage back. Jax is a little wary of Sub-Zero, though Sub-Zero reassures him that they have nothing to fear from him as he is not like his older brother, the original Sub-Zero. Jarek makes a joke about Sub-Zero's outfit, and remember when in my Brazilian Street Fighter video I said that you know 80s and 90s Brazilian art when you see it? Yeah, I'm seeing it right now. Anyway, Raiden brings everyone up to speed on Shinnok. He's a mad god that Raiden banished to the Netherrealm. Shinnok, however, took over the Netherrealm and became its ruler, but he was still unable to travel back to Earthrealm due to the Elder Gods' powers. However, after the events of Mortal Kombat 3, the barriers between worlds have been weakened, and Shinnok's return could mean the end of not just Earthrealm, but all of existence. Man, you gotta love how Mortal Kombat just keeps scaling power levels. Remember when this was just about a sorcerer who could shapeshift? Then it was Shao Kahn, and now a mad god bent on destroying existence. This is not even a dig at the comic, it's just how Mortal Kombat is. Still, it's kinda funny reading all of this and then remembering how much of a disappointing and piss-easy boss fight Shinnok was in Mortal Kombat 4. Man, talk about a letdown. Anyway, we get some brief comedy with Jarek being frozen solid by Sub-Zero as revenge for being mocked, before the story shifts to Kai being ambushed by Reptile, so the two start fighting and man, this is disappointing. I get the artist was most likely on a tight schedule, but man, just look at this, they're little more than stick figures. You don't even get to see their signature moves. And the fight ends with Kai killing Reptile. Next up, it's Reiko who ambushes Sub-Zero. Wait, I'm kinda lost here. So, is everyone just suddenly attacking and ambushing the Temple of Light? Yeah, so the pacing at locations get kinda iffy about this point. Anyway, Sub-Zero detects Reiko hiding in the shadows and recognizes him, saying he thought Reiko was dead. Sub-Zero then tries to convince Reiko to join them, but he refuses. And this fight is even more disappointing than the Kai and Reptile battle, as this one only lasts a single page and once again does this overly simplified art style. The battle literally ends as soon as it begins with Reiko being defeated by a single attack. At least you get to see two of Sub-Zero's signature moves, but Reiko does not even deliver a single punch. Anyway, Sub-Zero uses his Deep Freeze fatality, killing him on the spot. He is then taunted by Scorpion before we jump to Quan-Chi, who is raising an army of undead soldiers. And if Quan-Chi could do this all along, it kind of raises the question of what was even the point of Shinnok's armies. We now move on to issue 3 and oh man, this cover is not good. Quan-Chi sends his undead army to attack our heroes and we see the Mortal Kombat logo burning in the background. And where are we? Is this all happening in the Temple of Light? I am so confused. We literally just go to Raiden giving some exposition to people getting ambushed in the shadows and an undead army attacking. Like, I didn't cut any panels, that's literally how it goes. It all just happens out of nowhere with zero context. And then Liu Kang is in a temple that is apparently floating in the sky. What? Why? The narration says that he is in the same temple as everyone else, but just in a different room. But look at it! It's quite literally floating in the sky. And you're telling me that he cannot hear the battle outside? Look, I'm just gonna stop pretending that I know where the battles are taking place because I just cannot follow placement and locations anymore. Anyway, Liu Kang is ambushed by a new Psybot who is wielding a scythe for some reason. Oh yeah, Mortal Kombat 4 had weapon combat. I totally forgot about that. Man, that is something the comic did not bring this up until now. The two trade a few words, but nothing of real importance. Only that Noob Saibot is supposed to be legendary and the story told to scare children as nothing is known of the Shadow Clan. There's no mention of him being Sub-Zero's brother or having any relationship with Sub-Zero, which seems like a bit of a missed opportunity here. I'm pretty sure that by MK4, this plot was already known, but I could be wrong here. Still, it's good that the panels do not use the simplified style for this fight and we even get to see Liu Kang's bicycle kick. While that fight ensues, we jump back to Scorpion and Sub-Zero. Scorpion vows to end Sub-Zero as revenge for the actions of his brother who was responsible for killing Scorpion's family. The current Sub-Zero tries to bring Scorpion to reason, telling him that he's being used by Shinnok and that Quan-Chi was responsible for killing Scorpion's family. Which is yet another nice nod to Mortal Kombat mythology Sub-Zero. Yes, I like that game. Sue me. The fight is a bit uneven though. There's some really good art panels here, but then you have others which look pretty weird. Also, it's kinda weird how characters just pull weapons out of nowhere. Which, yeah, okay, I guess that one's on the game though. Scorpion then pulls off what is most likely the best page in this entire series. Man, look at how metal this looks, I love it! He then burns Sub-Zero, and we even see his health bar being nearly depleted with the danger warning appearing. Toasty! And you know what? That's a pretty cool nod to the games, not gonna lie there. We now jump to Jarek, who is fighting against the undead hordes, but a mysterious voice makes him an offer to join the other side. Before we're cut off, and are instead shown Johnny Cage doing a bunch of Titanic, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Waterworld references. He's then approached by Goro and wow, man, that is one for the good faces bot. No, wait, actually, that's two for the good faces bot. We get a brief flashback sequence on how Johnny Cage was responsible for defeating and humiliating Goro in the first Mortal Kombat tournament, which is most likely a reference to that awesome scene from the movie. But now his soul was brought back by Shinnok and yeah, Johnny just gets pretty much destroyed by Goro. The dude does not even get a single punch in before being rescued by Jax, who challenges Goro. Kai, on the other hand, is fighting and is killed by the undead hordes, which wow, that's a pretty lame way to go. I don't know what's worse, being killed off by unnamed expendable enemies, or being Reptile, who died at the hands of the character who got killed off by unnamed expendable enemies. Yeah, it's becoming pretty clear that some of these characters drew the short end of the stick and don't really add anything to the story. You could take both Reptile and Kai out of the plot and nothing would have changed. The same goes for Reiko too, though Kai does at least die while giving everyone the middle finger, so that's something, I guess. The fight between Liu Kang and Noob Saibot continues, but man, I have such a hard time believing that this is supposed to be inside the same temple we saw a few pages ago. Like, how did we even get here? Although I think that this is another reference to Mortal Kombat mythology Sub-Zero. Raiden and Fusion are staying out of the battle while discussing their chances of winning it, counting their losses and how they must still have faith on mortals, especially Liu Kang. Noob Saibot is unceremoniously defeated, like seriously. We see Liu Kang throw a Kamehameha wave, but there was no indication that this is what did him in. If Fusion hadn't said that Liu Kang won, I would not have gotten that from the sequential storytelling. Fusion tells Raiden the mortals need their help, but Raiden refuses, saying that they need to draw out Shinnok instead, so that the two gods can face him. The issue then ends with Sonya fighting against the undead army before receiving a surprise hit by Jarek, who switched sides. We now reach the final issue and the cover is... it's fine. Liu Kang's proportions are a bit on the weird side, but it's still a decent cover. Jax and Goro are fighting and the art here is pretty good, with some nice dynamic fighting poses. The battle ends with Jax sacrificing himself and pushing Goro out of bounds, with the two falling through the Temple of Light. Meanwhile, once again, Fusion argues that they need to help the mortals, while Raiden insists that they stay the course. Just as he finishes saying that, Shinnok appears and, oh man, he looks so weird. Like, he looked all skinny and lanky in the Mortal Kombat 4 and Sub-Zero games, but here he looks like an absolute unit. The three gods start fighting, with the shockwaves being felt across the globe. Basically, Raiden and Fusion are shooting Kamehameha waves at Shinnok, which seems to be having no effect. Meanwhile, Sonya and Jarek are still fighting and Jesus Christ! Eduardo, my dude, I'm 65% sure that's not how breaths work. Anyway, Jarek says that he's gonna... yeah, we're just gonna skip his dialogue here. While Sonya proves my theory that making armor out of green mozzarella is not a good idea. Johnny Cage then joins the fight, having partially recovered from his beatdown at Goro's hand, and distracts Jarek long enough for Sonya to land the finishing blow. Suddenly, Quan-Chi appears out of nowhere and demands Sonya begs for Johnny's life, when Scorpion also pops out of nowhere and grabs Quan-Chi with his spear throw. Scorpion then says that with his dying breath, Sub-Zero revealed that Quan-Chi was the one who ended Scorpion's clan, and so he drags Quan-Chi back to Hell. Which, to be fair, that's pretty much the Scorpion ending in Mortal Kombat 4 down to a T, so that's pretty cool.
Your soul will never rest, Scorpion. The Lin Kuei may have been responsible for your murder, but your family's true killer still remains free.
If you are not the murderer,
Then who is? I am the one you seek. To defeat my nemesis Sub-Zero, I needed the power of a Spectre. You've done my bidding well, Scorpion. But now I must return you to the Netherrealm. Never!
And suddenly, Liu Kang is now fighting Tanya. Man, these fights just come out of nowhere. But that's okay, because the fight lasts a single page anyway. All that backstory about revenge, and in the end she got taken out by a single jump kick. Liu Kang then hurries to Raiden and Fusion, who literally had zero effect on Shinnok. Good going, guys. Which makes Raiden and Fusion's role in the story kinda pointless actually. Seeing this, and receiving a few words of wisdom from Raiden, Liu Kang turns into a massive dragon and defeats Shinnok in one go. On the next page, we skip to Sonya, Cage and Liu Kang meeting up and mourning the loss of Jax, Sub-Zero and Kai. Though Liu Kang believes Raiden might be able to bring them back to life like he did with Johnny Cage. Yeah, this is basically Dragon Ball now. Raiden then reports back to the Elder Gods, who promote him to join their ranks, naming Fusion as his successor to protect Earthrealm, which again is just like the game.
I choose Fujin. He will guide the mortals of Earth as they move into the next millennium.
And so, they all see Raiden leave this realm, with Fusion stating that they have some friends to bring back.
You make it sound like death is no consequence.
It really doesn't. Hell, this is Chaozu's second time.
Next time I get a free sundae.
The comic then skips forward in time and ends with Liu Kang on an alleyway where he's fighting... someone. At first, I thought this was supposed to be Tanya, but Liu Kang does not recognize her and he says that she fights like Kitana, so it's clearly not Tanya. Liu Kang then turns into a dragon and eats her before revealing that this is in fact a recurring dream he's been having. And so, this run finally ends with a prologue to a story that never comes. Overall, this comic is not bad actually. The art ranges from weird and oddly proportioned to dynamic, visually interesting and pretty metal, while the plot follows that of Mortal Kombat 4 and Mythologies with some degree of accuracy. I think the biggest issue here is that many of the characters feel utterly pointless. You could have removed them with little to no influence to the plot itself. Additionally, towards the end it gets kinda weird with how some battles simply appear out of nowhere and end in an instant, with some major characters getting killed off. But then again, when you have to juggle so many characters in just 4 issues, you're bound to have some who end up getting sidelined. I mean, heck, even Mortal Kombat sidelined a lot of these characters. I mean, does anyone here actually remember Kai or Jarek? Even in the games, they are kind of not that interesting. And while this comic also has a lot of violence, blood, gore, and is a little bit on the edgy side, well, I mean, it is Mortal Kombat, so you knew what you were getting into. It's kind of expected at this point. And then of course, we have Mozzarela shirt over here. But overall, yeah, this is pretty decent actually. Honestly, it's a nice little companion piece to Mortal Kombat 4. I mean, sure, the canonicity of it all is a little questionable, but if you dig Mortal Kombat 4 or just Mortal Kombat in general, I think you'll get a kick out of this and it's definitely worth a read. The best part is that this series has actually been translated and it's also not too hard to find online. So yeah, if this seems interesting to you, I say track it down and give it a read. You just might find yourself having a good time. Hey everyone, thank you for watching Stika's Retro Corner. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell and share this video. All that fun social media stuff. I also want to thank the editor behind this comic book series, Marcelo Casaro, for helping me with this video, as well as Rob Malone for sending me scans of the comic book, Dragon Magazine, and providing context to all of it. And you can also support me on Patreon. It may not seem like it, but even $1 is a really big help in keeping this channel going. I would also like to thank my newest Patreon supporter, Nick, who may or may not be Nick Fury. I can neither confirm nor deny that. Anyway, I hope you have a great day. Bye!